What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we are going to be focusing back on the 454 SS shop truck. Last time you saw the truck, we rounded out all the suspension upgrades from QA1. We also previously had the engine completely assembled, but you see it here behind me. It is a little bit less assembled than it was previously. I found some problems with two sets of our lifters, so I'm getting some new ones ordered out, so that's no problem. But in the meantime, I'm gonna continue getting the engine into the truck. We have some long tube style headers. We are not sure if they're gonna clear the bracketry for our QA1 suspension. If we need to make some cuts or changes to the mounting or the bracketry, we can do so before this is ready to go in. Along with getting our engine installed, we have a handful of awesome Holley parts that are gonna get installed on the truck as well. We have a whole front drive system that is a mid-mount style drive system. Everything is centralized around our water pump, so it keeps it extremely compact. So out with the old cast iron water pump, and here we have a brand new cast aluminum piece. So it's gonna be weight savings as well as adding a lot of space in the engine bay and making everything look real nice. The kit is also completely blacked out, so the wrinkled finish on the water pump as well as the black finish on all the accessories and the pulleys. So they'll look real cool and slick with the black and red theme with the 454 SS truck. Really excited about getting this on here and the way it's gonna look. And we also have a brand new set of fabricated valve covers, also in a wrinkled black finish with the classic Chevrolet logo. Got some gaskets for those as well. But first we'll get the engine inside, test fit it, and then we'll start adding on all those parts once we know that everything's gonna fit. So I put some covering over the valley while we have the intake off as a protective measure to make sure we have no material or anything flying in there. We are in the fab shop, so I want to make sure it doesn't get anything in there. Kalel's over here getting the engine mounts and all the hardware prepped up. Also, I want to cut out a couple little tabs so we can hang this engine. I don't want to mess up the aluminum finish here, which is bolting a chain to it. So I'm going to make a small tab here so we can put our hooks in, and then we're going to lift this guy and get it inside the frame rails. I also have a rear main seal that we have to put in this guy. Got the engine in place. We've already started mocking this stuff up here. We've got one header up. Over here we don't have too much of a concern for anything. Clears all the mounting for the control arms as well as the body and everything over here. Steering, we don't have it in here, but looks like it'll have plenty of room to make it. The other side though, on the passenger side, not so much. We haven't quite made it all the way down to our mount hole. You can see we're about almost a half an inch away, and we are rubbing pretty good right here in this area where the bracketry for the upper control arm mounts are, and to the first runner on our exhaust manifold here. So we may make a small change in the exhaust. We're gonna put this up here, make our marks, figure out what's gonna have to change, make that change, and then we'll mock this thing back up and see how it fits. So we've made our marks, you can see here and here on this first runner, and what we're gonna do is remove that section, and we are gonna change the way this bend moves. We'll have it bend more inwards towards the block so we can have clearance for our bracketry. Now I got this side bolted on. We definitely need to figure out how we're gonna make this curve. Like I said, instead of having it go directly under this runner, we're just gonna have it go back behind it and then meet back up into it here. Now we know we have to make some bends. I found some more 1 3/4 stainless. So what we're gonna do is cut some pie cuts. We didn't really anticipate having to do any bending, so I don't have any pre-cut pie cuts right now. So we're just gonna make some of our own. Pretty simple process. So what I did here is marking the center line of our tubing And all that's gonna do is help us get a consistent cut every time we go to cut, because we'll have to rotate the pipe to offset our cut, and I want exactly the same part every time we make a new cut. So keeping the center line is gonna help us do that. And all I did was wrap a single piece of tape around our tubing, made those marks on the tape. So this was the beginning and this was the end. And all I did was take that distance, I measured it out with my calipers, divided it by 2, and that will give me the center line of the tubing. Then I also took my square and I just put it up against the flat face of the tubing, which I already cut straight, so I know it's a known flat edge, and then just scribed a line all the way across. So that's our center line on one side and then the center line on the other side. So the last part of making these repeatable cuts is making a mark here on our holding fixture for our chop saw, so I can line up our center line up to the same spot every time. Make a small mark. So now every time I roll my tube over, I'll just made it right back up to that mark, and I'll be able to make the same cut every time. I'm gonna do a 4-degree cut, and we'll probably do 8 to 10 of these or so. So I've got my handful of cuts already laid out here. Now I just gotta clean up the edges, get them prepped up for welding. All right, so the engine is in. We have the modifications made to our header. Mikey's finishing out getting the welds done on it. So right now I'm gonna move the truck onto the lift so we can get our transmission back underneath the truck and continue on with assembling the drivetrain. Got our transmission mated up, got the torque converter fastened to the flex plate, dipstick tube is in, got my drive shaft in already. Khalil's laying down some fresh paint on our cross member right now. As soon as he gets that over here, we could bolt that up, pull the jack for the transmission out, as well as our T-stand. It's just up there for a little bit extra support. We also got to put in our transmission cooler lines right here. We have a nice factory replacement aluminum radiator that's going to be going into the front of this, so I'm going to retain our factory lines for the transmission cooler. And this truck also has an oil cooler built into the radiator, so I'm going to use the factory lines for that as well. All right, I've got our modified exhaust manifold ready to go back on. We test fit it on. I'm pretty sure it fits because we did a lot of testing before. So I'm gonna get this thing bolted back up there and bolt it on for the last time. The header is in, looking fresh. Fits, it's clear, ready to rock. I'm really digging the all black combo here with our accessory drive and the valve covers. All that stuff's gonna look really awesome with all of our Holley fuel management and ignition system parts. A lot of people were asking, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do for the wiring and the fueling and the throttle body injection? Well, we're scrapping all of the stock ECU stuff and we're going to a Holley EFI. We're just keeping it pretty mild with our 4150 style flange with a bolt-on style EFI unit. If anyone is not familiar with the Sniper units, they are a fully bolt-on EFI unit. This unit particularly comes with 4 100-pound fuel injectors. You can see on this side here, it's got a throttle position sensor and also a built-in map sensor. You can see it poking out down there, and that records intake air temperature. So it's got all of our necessary items needed to run an EFI system and deliver the proper fueling. We have the ignition stuff, really super heavy duty HEI style coil. It's gonna look cool in the engine bay, and it's also gonna deliver that awesome spark. To round off our Hyperspark system, we have an ignition box that's gonna be able to give us a really good RPM signal. It has the drivers built in to fire this coil. The last part of this system is our Hyperspark distributor. Really easy hookup. It's got a mating connector that'll go right into the harness that we have. It's a Hyperspark harness that's meant to mate all these parts super easy to hook up. It's only 4 wires, a power, a ground, switch to ignition, and then your output to your fuel pump. In our situation, we are going to change some of the wiring to integrate it into the truck wiring that's already existing. Very simple to install. This Stealth unit actually doesn't have a built-in regulator like some of the other units do. So we have an external regulator here. The command pressure is right around 60 PSI for the fuel injectors. So this is going to be perfect for our application. We have already in the tank a factory fitment Aeromotive fuel pump. It's a 440 style pump, so that's going to be plenty enough to feed this unit. There's some stuff that I'm going to be making to mount all of these. There's some custom bracketry to hold of our throttle cables as well as our fuel regulator. And as I mentioned before, I'm waiting on some lifters. We had some damaged lifters that Jegs is swapping out for us. They're on their way here, so I don't have my manifold completely bolted down yet. Everything is kind of just mocked up so I can continue working. So let's get to work and get this thing running. All right, so I got my simple bracket bent up, gave it a little bit of offset to stand it off the firewall, inserted this riv nut, and now I'll be able to bolt our bracket in. All right, so our regulator's mounted over here. Now I can terminate some hose ends onto our feed and our return here. So we're using Earl's Pro Light 350 series hose, along with our Earl's AN fittings. All these 90s are swivel fittings, so we don't have to worry about clocking. We just put them up there and point them as we need to. We can spin the ends in 360 degrees. You can see down here our return is straight underneath where the regulator is. Our feed is coming in on this side and then pushing out this way. I decided to put our regulator real low and kind of out of the way, but still keeping our manual gauge here, our analog gauge, visible in case we need to troubleshoot or anything like that. Obviously we'll set our base fuel pressure once we get it all wired up. But yeah, it turned out nice. Everything's nice and sleek and tucked away. Plenty of room for our wiring from our distributor cap to make it out to our spark plugs that are going to be mated down here. Like I said, still waiting on some parts, so I haven't locked down my intake manifold. I finally have got our push rods in the mail. The reason we're getting different push rods was because when I first got a set of lifters, they were collapsed. So we ordered another set of lifters, but they were a different style. We've then had to order a different length push rod, which puts us in the position now of waiting on this second set of push rods. I think they're about 60 thousandths shorter. I'm gonna get those put into the engine, double check, make sure those all work with our valve train, make sure that our rocker arm is in the proper location on the tip of the valves, so we can get this thing put back together. Intake finalized, Holley sniper unit installed, finalized, and then we'll be able to pull down our valve covers and start finalizing the whole upper part of the engine. Kind of got set a little bit backwards with that hold up with the valve train, but we want to get it right, and I'm glad that I caught those problems before I just shoved them in there and we had some sort of failure as we were running the engine. Before I get my intake installed on the engine, I wanted to make a small modification. With the Sniper, one of the main controls to deliver fuel is it uses a built-in map sensor. And the map sensor is actually located on one of the sides of the actual unit. And as you can see on these carburetor style manifolds, there's a large partition here separating one bank from the other. So what I believe is that adding some more volume into the plenum makes for more accurate reading with our map sensor. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut some of this guy out. So the plenum's cut out now, all smoothed out with a carbide burr, no weird edges, everything's nice and smooth, promote good flow. So now we're ready to get this thing bolted on for the last time. Putting on the valve covers right now, and I'm trying to get these guys lined up, but it doesn't seem like it wants to line up on my holes perfectly. The hole's not lined up. It's off by, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. But either way, not getting to where it needs to be because it's touching something underneath here. I believe it's right here where this cutout is for our mounting bolt. So I think that, yeah, it feels like it's right here. So, yeah, so you can see here, very small amount of distance between this mounting flange here versus the rocker. And I think that where they have the cutout, it's rubbing slightly in here. So we'll clearance that on the inside of the valve cover. I think that will be really easy for us to just cut away a little bit of material right here. I mean, it might even just be that this weld is a little bit larger than the rest of it. So we'll trim this guy down, refit it, and see how it goes. All right, onto the passenger side. I'm glad I pulled this one off and checked because this one is hitting exactly the same way that the other side was. So obviously the head is mirrored this way. So this one is where it was an issue. And now this one you can see is an issue here. I'm gonna have to do the same type of deal that I did on the other side with the passenger side. And then we'll get this cover fitted back on. Going along with our HyperSpark ignition system, I have a set of MSD ignition wires, 8.5mm core wire. Now that the wires and the plugs are in, next thing we got to do is install our distributor. Our distributor is already popped in there right now, but that was just to keep the hole plugged up and stuff didn't fall in there. To get this HyperSpark distributor installed is actually very, very easy. Get your crankshaft up to top dead center on the compression stroke. The next thing I have to do is drop our distributor in and line up where I want my #1 spark plug wire to go. This is pretty much just a Hall effect sensor. You can see the different cutouts, the little windows. So this comes with your HyperSpark distributor, and this is basically going to align your Hall effect sensor to your #1 position. So you can see here it's got a cutout for the 2 little locating pins on the side and then for the rotor on top. So it can really only go one way, which is just like this. And now our distributor is lined up and timed at top dead center. And then we'll put our cap back on. This only goes on one way as well. Finally got that distributor installed and finalized with all of our ignition cables routed underneath the manifolds. Also conquered our valve covers, modified those, got those on for the final time. We've made that small modification to our Edelbrock manifold to work a little bit better with our new EFI system mounted right on top. That almost rounds off all the ignition system. We still have the CD box as well as the ignition coil to finalize everything so we can get it to run. But we've made a couple changes and we're gonna move these guys to the inside of the truck, which we're not ready to get everything mounted up inside there yet. First fire up is gonna have to wait till another episode. We wanna get it done right. We are inching closer to getting this thing fired up. I'm really excited to hear the sound of this big block. So make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe so you guys don't miss out on the next episodes, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.